Well, hello second grade. Today we are going to start to make these sarcophagus drawings. We talked a little bit about Egypt and mummification, and so now we are going to begin to draw our own sarcophagus of either a king or a queen. So you can see a little bit difference between the two. The king has a big fancy headdress on and the queen has big beautiful hair. And then we fill the bodies of the sarcophagus from the neck down with different Egyptian patterns that we can find in the handout that I gave you, or even some Egyptian hieroglyphics, the way that they write. And then we use black marker to outline and then color it in. So the way that we start this is we're going to start with a symmetrical shape. It's going to be folded down the middle and the same on both sides. So you're going to start with a tan piece of paper. You need to fold it in half, long ways, tall ways. And then you have your choice between two patterns. If you want to do the king, you want to choose the pattern that has the pointy shoulder. If you want to do the queen, you want to pick the pattern that has the more rounded shoulder. So I'm going to go ahead and do a king, but I will walk you through doing a queen as well. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to flip it over so that the fold, here's my opening, so that the fold is on the left hand side, and then I use the straight side of the king's pattern and I'm going to line it up at the bottom down here to save some tracing. Then slide it all the way up along the edge, and then I'm going to use my pencil to trace around it. I'm also going to trace around this opening here, but I'm not going to cut this opening. This opening is just to help me to know where the face goes. And so now that I have this shape, I'm going to use my scissors to cut this shape out, leaving the paper folded. And I'm cutting both pieces of paper out at the same time. I'm leaving it folded, cutting both out. So that when I do cut it out, it's all in one continuous shape. And it'll be symmetrical, the same on both sides. Now you're not going to cut this shape out. This is the face. So when you open it up, it looks something like this. Now you're going to use this pattern one more time, and you're going to flip it over and use the straight side to line up with the crease in the middle. And you'll use the face shape to kind of line up the edges, and then you'll trace the other side of the face. So it's that simple. Okay. Now, these are the same steps that you follow with the girl, the queen. I'm going to do her on white paper just so that you can recognize the difference. So, I take my paper, I fold it in half for the queen, and then I use the queen's pattern, line it up with the bottom edge, and then trace around the outer edge. Now if you're doing a queen, you'll do it on tan paper. I'm just using the white here. It's what I had available. And then you open her up, and you flip that over, line it up, and finish drawing the other side of the face. Okay? So you're finished with the patterns for your king and queen. So now you're ready to draw the headdress or the hair. So with the king, you're going to start on the outer edges of the face, and you're going to draw a vertical line that comes down from the sides of the face. Now if we use the king here as an example, you can see it comes pretty far down, and you want to look at the edges, the pointy shoulder part, and you want to bring that pretty far down, and then you're going to curve it horizontally to the side, and then curve up a little bit, and then bring it over to match that corner of the headdress there. And you can make this more rounded if you want, so it's not quite so pointy, or you can leave it pointy. And you want to look at them to make sure they look symmetrical. So this might take you a few minutes to kind of get this the way you want it. Okay? And then for the queen, she starts the same way. You draw some vertical lines that come straight down from the side of the head. And then you're going to decide how long you want her hair. If you want it a little bit longer, you can bring it a little bit longer. You're going to curve horizontally and then back up vertically to meet where the shoulder meets the side of the hair. And you want them to be symmetrical, so I'm going to bring this other one down as far as you do and bring it over. All right, and that's and then one other thing that's different for the queen from the king is you're going to add this headband. So right straight across the top of her head, take your ruler, line it up, bring that across, and then draw the top of the headband. You can make it a skinnier headband, a thicker headband, it's up to you. So you're going to do that for the queen. So that's the difference between, essentially the difference between the king and the queen. Their faces are pretty much the same, and then the way that we do the body's the same. So I'm going to set the queen aside and just work on the king for now. So this fancy headdress of the king, I would like you to keep it symmetrical, so the stripes on the headdress to be the same. So I'm going to take my ruler, make sure it's horizontal, side to side. I'm going to draw a line on this side of the headdress and this side of the headdress. And then I'm going to come up, and you can make these as thick as you want. If you want to make them skinnier, you're going to have lots of stripes. If you want to make them fatter, you have a little bit less stripes. So then I'm going to just keep going across, trying to make sure I keep them pretty symmetrical, the same on both sides, and I try to keep the same thickness, that I don't have it really fat on one side and skinny on the other. And these clear rulers do a really good job because you can see through them, and you can see that whether or not you're horizontal and how thick your line is going to be. Alright, so that's about that. Now I'm going to start to kind of fan out. So I'm going to actually use this fold here as my guide. I'm going to draw a line on this side of the fold that kind of angles away from the fold at the top edge, so it's kind of at a diagonal, and I'm going to do that same on the other side of the fold, trying to keep it about the same thickness. So because these top stripes, they kind of fan out, they're wider at the top and skinnier at the bottom, because that's a smaller space at the bottom and a wider space at the top. And then I'm going to draw another stripe here and try to make them about the same thickness, and I use the guide around the head as help. And then two more here and two more here. So now I should have a pretty symmetrical king headdress. So now I want you to add a little line for the neck. So you have to decide where the neck ends. You don't want the neck to end right at the bottom of the headdress, because that would be a really long giraffe-like neck. So got to decide where that neck's going to end, and you're going to draw kind of a curved line there for the neck. For the queen, you do the same thing, a curved line for the neck. Now let's start working on the face. So I'm going to zoom in, and the face for the king and the queen are very similar, very much the same. So if you're doing a king or a queen, you'll follow these steps. So we're going to start with the eyes, and I place them pretty high on the face because you have to imagine that the headdress or the headband kind of cover up the forehead. So on each side of the line, you're going to draw a nice ellipse shape that fills this space. So you don't want to draw a small little ellipse. And ellipses are not easy to draw. So take your time, draw lightly until you get it right. Don't push really hard with your pencil and make a dark mark. It's harder to erase. And then the Egyptians usually had these like little fan parts to their eyes. So I kind of just draw two little lines. Inside the eyes, you're going to draw a big circle that touches the top and the bottom with a black dot inside. And then we want to draw some strong eyebrows. So right where the point of the inside of the eye is, I come straight up and I draw a short little vertical line. And then I draw a curved line from the bottom of the vertical line back over the eye. And then at the top of the vertical line, I bring it to touch. And this is going to be a little tricky too, so do not push hard, second grade, with your pencil. Draw lightly until you get it the way you want. You're going to be doing some erasing, so take your time. Then when we do the nose, we want a full frontal nose. We don't want like the L nose that like looks like it's a profile view, or the side of the nose. So you're going to draw a real shallow letter U. And then on one side of the nose, you're going to draw a letter C that starts above the nose and swings down and touches the bottom of the U. And you'll do the same on the other side, but it'll be backwards, letter C. And then for the mouth, it's just a straight line. The bottom lip is a U shape. And the top lip is like two bumps, almost like a letter M, but not pointy like a letter M. And that will be the same face that you do for the queen, so everyone should have been following along with me. and we're going to focus on the body. I want you to break up the body into about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 spaces. Yeah, I did 6 on the queen as well. So I just kind of start at the bottom of the sarcophagus. This seems to me like a great place to add a horizontal line going across, just to break this up into like 6 horizontal rows. And so that's one. Let me see. I'll put one here at the bottom of his headdress. You don't want to put too many skinny spaces, because that means you have that much more designs to draw and hieroglyphics to draw. But you also don't want to make them too gigantic. So you kind of have to find a happy medium. They do not need to all be exactly the same width. So if I put a line, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I just need one more line to make 6. And I'll make one of this space a little bit bigger than some other spaces. So once you do that, then you get to use the handout to come up with all sorts of different ideas for Egyptian patterns. So this front page is a great example. These are all vertical patterns, but you could easily draw them horizontally. If you look at my king here, this vertical pattern here, I did horizontally. I did stripes, and then I turned the lotus flower this way so that it fit horizontal. So any of these vertical patterns you could easily turn horizontal. This was a vertical pattern and a vertical pattern. This one here is here, this here is down here, and then on my queen I did this pattern right here. So you can see I turned a lot of these vertical patterns to horizontal patterns. When you turn the page on the back, there's some horizontal patterns. Here are some different images that represent Egypt that you see a lot in Egypt. On the back of this page is full of hieroglyphics. So I used some of these hieroglyphics on my king and my queen, and I just made a pattern out of them. For instance, on my king, these are hieroglyphics here. This represents a T, and then this represents an I. And I wasn't trying to spell anything out. I was just, I found 2 shapes that I like to draw, and I just repeated those hieroglyphics into a pattern. And then on this back 2 pages are some bookmarks, Egyptian bookmarks that I copied that have really great examples of different kinds of Egyptian style designs on the tops and the bottoms of the bookmarks that you could easily use for patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling in these horizontal these horizontal rows with different patterns. So I like this pattern here. So I'm going to pick a space maybe on this space here, and I'm going to draw my rectangles. And I have to draw them fairly big because this is a big space. So I don't want to draw super tiny and then it not fill the space. It's interesting with the ovals and the straight lines, so maybe down here at the bottom I'll do that. And you can make any adjustments to any of these that you like, but I want you to try to use some of them for ideas. I don't want you to come up with too many patterns on your own. I want this to look very Egyptian. So that's why I gave you the handout, so you could get some ideas. I think I'll use some hieroglyphics here, and maybe I'll do the feathers. And then I just have this last space up here. And I don't want to do anything too super detailed because the headdress covers up a lot of that. So maybe I'll just do some thicker stripes. Alright, so now my Egyptian sarcophagus of my king is drawn, but now I need to outline with marker. So you're going to get yourself a placemat to go under your work, so you don't get marker on the table. And you're going to start with the Sharpie markers, just to kind of keep your detail nice and neat. So I like to start with the face and get that finished. You want to color in your eyebrows. You want to color in the dot in the eye. If you drew real tiny facial features and you need a super small black marker to fill that in without it looking like a big black blob, then come see me and I'll get you some skinnier markers. But if you drew the facial features nice and big on the face, you should be okay with the Sharpie. Also, if these markers start to die on you, cap them. You can throw them away plenty. So if they're not working, get one that is working. Alright, so then at this point, I want you to start coloring in, and I'd like you to use these markers with the stripes on the handles. I'd like you to color in some of your pattern to create a nice contrast. So I'd like you to look at the difference between this king and this king. So this one really does stand out because it has a lot more of the dark color. This is just a little bit of the dark color and mostly tan. So by evening out, adding a lot of colored in spaces, you're evening out the tan and the black, and that really creates a nice contrast and makes your piece look even that much nicer. So I'm going to color in every other stripe with a marker, and then I'm going to start working through my patterns. And again, with these markers, only use ones that are working, and you need to color in the headdress symmetrical. So since if I color in this bottom part on this side with the marker, I got to color in the bottom part on the other side with the marker. And then I skip a space, color the next stripe. Use the diagonal part of the marker tip. You can color in a lot faster or whiter. If you use the pointy part, you get a thinner line, which would take you longer. Now I just work through the pattern down here and decide what I'm going to color in. So I think I'm going to color in these skinnier stripes and leave the big fat areas uncolored. And then maybe I'll color in the hieroglyphics here. With this one, let's see, maybe I'll color every other space in the background black. This one I could either color in the bumps or the background. I think I'll color in the background. Just as I work my way down, I just keep deciding what I'm going to color in, whether it's the background or the shapes themselves. I'm going to alternate, color one, skip one, color one, skip one. Since I'm the artist, I get to decide. So since you're the artist, as you're working through your patterns, you get to decide what you color and what you don't color. But you need to try to get enough color enough spaces in black so that you get a good contrast between the tan and the black. And then if you're anything like me, you don't always go over all of your pencil lines exactly perfect. So the very last step that I want you to do is to go back with an eraser and erase any pencil lines that you see poking out. And just clean this up and make it look the best that it could possibly look. There you have your very beautiful Egyptian sarcophagus. Good job, second grade.